Setting boundaries with family is hard, but if your family boundaries tend to collapse as soon as someone gets upset, they're not boundaries, they're wishes, and wishes don't protect your peace. If you've ever said to your family, "I can't do that," or "I'm not talking about this anymore," but then 2 minutes later you're either giving in or having to explain yourself again, this episode is for you. We have a lot to discuss, so let's talk about why your family boundaries don't stick. Hello and welcome back to Let's Talk About Mental Health. I'm Jeremy Godwin, and this show is all about practical mental health advice for real life. This week is the first of 4 mini episodes looking at things that will help you year-round, but especially at the end of the year when this is being released. So if family stuff tends to hit a nerve for you, especially at this time of the year, there's a very good reason for that. When you're already struggling or barely holding it together, juggling work and money stress and your own mental health, as well as whatever else life throws at you, you'll often find that family dynamics don't just feel annoying, they can feel like they might undo you. They're overwhelming, and they take you right back to a version of yourself that you've worked hard to grow past. One of the ongoing themes I explore in this show is how to build better relationships for the sake of your mental health. And look, I'm most certainly not talking about how to make your family perfect or suddenly become close. We're simply going to talk about how to realistically protect your well-being inside relationships that are complicated and messy, or just flat out hard work. Because sometimes the healthiest relationship shift isn't closeness, it's clarity. So if you've been thinking, why can't I keep my boundaries with my family? Or why do I turn into a different person around them? You're in the right place. Let's unpack what's really going on, because once you can see the pattern clearly, that's when you can start changing how you respond to it. So let's talk about why your boundaries collapse with family. Okay, let's get really clear on what we're talking about here. When I say your family boundaries don't stick, what I mean is this. You try to put a limit in place with someone in your family. Maybe it's how long you're going to stay, or what you'll talk about, or what you'll tolerate, etc. And whatever that boundary is, you genuinely mean it. But then they react. They get upset, offended, frosty, dramatic, or they pull out the guilt card, or all of the above. And suddenly your boundary starts to wobble, or at least your resolve to stick to it does. You might soften your boundary, or explain it, or defend it, or apologize for it, or you may even drop it entirely because it feels easier in the moment. And then, later, you feel angry at them and at yourself. If that's your pattern, then I need you to hear this clearly. It's not because you're weak or because you don't want your boundaries badly enough. It's because family boundaries come with history, and history comes with roles. Let me explain. Most of us learnt very early on who we had to be in order to survive emotionally in our family system. Maybe you were the peacemaker, the good one, the responsible one, the helper, the keep the peace one. And those roles don't just vanish because you're an adult now. They still get triggered, and fast. You can be 45, independent, paying your own bills, and yet still find yourself feeling like a naughty child when your mother sighs the right way. So, when you set a boundary, you're not just dealing with today's conversation. You're dealing with the emotional wiring of years. And here's the blunt truth, although I'm going to say it with kindness. If your boundary depends on your family liking it or agreeing with it, then it's never going to hold. Because the whole point of a boundary is that you're doing something different from your old role. And the people who benefit from you performing that old role will often push back. That's why this stuff impacts you so much mentally. Your nervous system reads their disappointment or anger as danger because your brain learned years ago that being rejected or criticized by family means emotional pain or conflict or withdrawal or chaos. So your mind goes into protection mode and it starts saying things to you like, fix it, smooth it over, make everything okay again. And meanwhile, your adult self is trying to say, hang on, I'm allowed to have limits and I don't have to put up with crap, which you don't, by the way. Those two parts of you collide in real time. And so that collision is what makes sticking to your boundaries feel impossible. This is exactly how it damages your ability to build better relationships. Because the relationship cannot grow into something healthier if you're stuck performing a role from the past that keeps you small. A relationship that relies on you overfunctioning or self-abandoning is not a safe relationship for you to be in. So here are two things I want you to keep in your mind as we're talking through this today. First, a boundary is not a request for permission. It's a statement of self-respect. And second, guilt is not proof you're doing something wrong. It's often proof you're doing something new. And let's be honest, it's often the most annoying kind of proof there is, but it's still proof. So, if your family boundaries keep sliding out from under you, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just trying to change a lifelong dynamic while a part of you is still terrified of what happens if you stop playing your old part. And once you understand that and embrace that fact, we can work with it instead of you beating yourself up for it. And that's exactly what we're going to discuss right after this quick break. And welcome back. So now let's talk about how to set boundaries with family that stick. I just want to say this before we start. You don't need to do all of these tips. In fact, please don't try to. Pick one or two things that feel most doable for you now, because that's how you build momentum when you're already stretched thin. You can come back and try other things later and add them on. So let's begin with some quick things that you can do immediately, starting with write your boundary in one sentence. And that's just one sentence, not a paragraph, and most certainly not a justification or a defense. This is just one simple sentence that describes your boundary so that you can anchor yourself in it. This saves you from having to think about it when emotions are heightened. So if you write it down and you repeat it to yourself and you know it off by heart, you can then say it calmly if and when you need to, and then stop talking. You don't have to explain yourself. You can let the silence do the heavy lifting. Okay, next, pair your boundary with a small and realistic consequence. And I know the word consequence can sound harsher than it is, so here's what I mean. This isn't about punishment, it's about clarity. Family systems test boundaries all the time, not always on purpose, but because the old dynamic feels normal to all of them. If your boundary comes with no follow-through, then the system learns, okay, they didn't really mean it. So instead, choose one simple action you can actually do if and when the line is crossed. Maybe it is stepping back from the group chat and actually sticking to that, or saying, if you keep going, I'm not staying in this conversation. And then, and this is the key part, you actually follow through the very first time. No 42 warnings, no 3 warnings, all right? And no drama and no speeches, just calm action. Say what you're going to do, and then if need be, follow through. That one follow through does more to make your boundary stick than 10 emotional explanations ever will. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable the first few times you do it, because you're breaking a rule that you learnt years ago, which is don't upset them, right? But upsetting yourself over and over again isn't a healthier rule to constantly obey. So something has to change because nothing changes if nothing changes. Okay, so now let's go through how to work on this stuff in the longer term. And my advice here is train your tolerance for disapproval. This is about helping your boundaries to grow roots long term, because right now the trigger isn't only what they're doing, it's what your body thinks their reaction means. Disapproval from family can feel like danger, so your brain goes, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, and suddenly you're backpedaling before you've even noticed. So we need to teach your nervous system that someone being unhappy with you is not an emergency, because you are allowed to have limits. As long as you're being respectful and you're not harming anyone, what you do with your life is up to you. Someone who loves you unconditionally should be willing to embrace you for you, not just when you agree with them or when you bend to their will. Because if you need other people to approve your boundary in order for you to hold it, then they're the ones who are in charge of your well-being, not you. But if your boundary comes from a place of self-respect, then it can survive their feelings about it. You build this one small action at a time. So say no to something you don't want to do. Don't reply to a message immediately. Turn down an invitation without giving a long excuse. Let someone be mildly disappointed and notice that you're still safe. Each action tells your body, I can handle discomfort and still be okay. And so then when your family disapproves, and they might, your system won't panic as hard. It's basically like emotional strength training, but without the sweaty equipment or the grunting, which is a win, really. And if it helps to normalize this for you, just remind yourself here, you're not training all of this stuff in order to be rude. You're training to be free. Free from the role that keeps you small and free from guilt driving your actions. So, start small, stay consistent, and let it feel awkward while your brain catches up to your growth. That's how your family boundaries stop being wishes and start becoming your reality. All right, so now it's up to you to pick which one or two of these you're going to focus on first. Let me know in the comments and let's talk about it. Now, here's the main thing I want you to take away from all this today. The reason your family boundaries don't stick isn't because you're hopeless at boundaries. It's because you're trying to change an old relationship dynamic while your nervous system is still terrified of what might happen if you stop playing your old role. Once you understand that, you can stop blaming yourself and start responding differently. So take a moment and ask yourself, where do you need to set stronger boundaries with your family? Because when you boil it all down, your boundaries are how you stop losing yourself to other people's expectations. Each week I like to finish up by sharing a quote about the week's topic, and I encourage you to take a few moments to really reflect on it and consider what it means to you. This week's quote is by an unknown author, and it is, "You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm." Let me repeat that. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. All right, that's it for this week. If you'd like to support the show, my Patreon gets you early ad-free episodes and extras. It's linked below. Thank you very much for joining me today. Look after yourself and make a conscious effort to share positivity and kindness out into the world, because you get back what you put out. Take care and talk to you next time. Join me next week to talk about why the past still haunts you, and check out my episode on breaking unhealthy patterns next. It's linked in the description. Plus, Plus, follow or subscribe to never miss an episode. Let's Talk About Mental Health is an independent program. Discover more at ltamh.com.